Hi everyone, welcome to our presentation on using goal setting and feedback to increase weekly running distance. This is the spring 2020 and we are Team Central Standard Time. First, let's get started with our group. We have Kelly, Brianne, Andrea, and Melissa.
Original study. Our original study is on the article Using Goal Setting and Feedback to Increase Weekly Running Distance by Wack, Crosland, and Milton from 2014. The purpose of the study is to examine the effects of goal setting and performance feedback for increasing running distance among healthy young adults.
The study consisted of 5 women ages 18 to 20 years old. The materials we used for the study was a Nike Plus sport band and the website runningnike.com and a sensor. The behavior definition of the running episode is defined as a continuous speed faster than a brisk walk, about 4 miles per hour. The study used a multiple baseline across participants with a changing criteria design for intervention 2. It consisted of 2 interventions. Intervention 1 was a daily goal setting, whereas intervention 2 was a weekly goal setting with feedback.
IOA was collected by the researcher and participants via documentation of the date and distance for each running episode. The only limitation was the lack of maintenance data. The results indicated that all participants increased their running distance and 3 participants did not meet criterion for intervention 1 and decided to move to intervention 2. In conclusion, goal setting and performance feedback was effective in the long and short-term goals of running.
Here were the results of the study that was used when using a multiple baseline across participants. As you can see, image 1 shows 2 of the participants who stayed on intervention 1, whereas the image 2 on the right shows the graph of the 3 participants who moved to intervention 2. One of the best ways to prove how effective feedback and goal setting is on physical activity is to look at the supporting literature. A study by Gu and others in 2018 tested if a pedometer-based intervention and goal setting can increase the physical activity in children. 137 students were given a personalized meter to target their PE classes 3 times a week for 24 sessions. Researchers updated the personal step goal inside of the pedometer each week and a poster in the gym to record their own step counts to allow self-monitoring. At the end of the results, it showed that the steps of these students increased from 1,949 to 2,339. The 8-week intervention proved to be effective in increasing students' motor competence and physical activity in PE.
Another study that we chose to support the literature was a study by Brotston Ward in 2002, which examined the relationship between public posting, goal setting, and oral feedback with the performance of 3 high school soccer players. The dependent variables consisted of the following ball handling skills: movement with the ball, movement during restarts, and movement after the player passed the ball. Our participants ranged between the ages of 15 to 17 years old and had played soccer for over 5 years. The intervention was comprised of a publicly displayed performance chart, daily goals, and oral feedback from the researchers. Researchers and coaches set a criterion of 90% correct performance across the target behaviors. Data was collected over the course of 27 practices and reported as percentage of appropriate movements. The results indicated the effectiveness of the treatment package for improving the performance of all 3 skills.
In addition, another study we use is a physical education class to determine which positive feedback can achieve. The article is named The Motivating Role of Positive Feedback in Sport and Physical Education by Morris and others 2018. The research tests for positive competence feedback will result in higher competence and create higher satisfaction in the need of compete, and would increase the task-related motivation. The study hypothesized that performance will be different based on the type of feedback that was given. The research separated the students into 2 groups. One will receive strong feedback and the other one will receive mild positive feedback. A total of 228 students participated. 111 were male and 117 were male and 111 were females. They all attended to Greek middle schools and were in 7th to 9th grade. The experiment took place during PE lessons at the school. The students were introduced to the shallow run task and the distance they would have to run. Before starting the shallow run task, participants were asked to report how much they value doing well on the activity and how confident they felt by completing the questionnaire. Results shows that students praised by PE teachers and sport coaches for successfully accomplishing a required activity tend to feel more competent and naturally motivated to complete the activity.
The next article was a study by Washington, Kelly, and Gibson in an article in 2014, who evaluated the use of a low-cost contingency management program to increase physical activity. They chose 15 students between the ages of 19 to 26 who wore a Fitbit to track steps. They were able to take data collection by using reinforcement in the form of prizes that were drawn, and the subjects were reported the daily steps total that they did every day through text message. Then the researchers would respond with the next day's criterion. Only 13 out of the 15 students completed the study, but every subject's active minutes were highly correlated with overall step count. The percentage of change for all subjects from baseline to intervention averaged 23%.
Lastly, I found research on the influence of self-monitoring by Nelson and others in 1982. The participants were to record frequency data on how many times they touched their face. Participants in this study were given data sheets marked in 5-minute intervals. They concluded that both the accuracy and reactivity of self-monitoring may persist over a relatively long self-recording period. Face touching frequency was higher in baseline than it was during self-monitoring.
Replication. Now we will talk about how we made this study into our own. Replication. Our purpose in the study was to increase healthy habits while running weekly by setting daily goals or weekly goals. We are in the ages of 22 years old to 31 years old. We are all students pursuing master's degrees at Ball State University. The materials for the project is a cell phone device and the Strava app. The participants will record their distance during each running episode using the Strava app. Then the participants will record the date and distance of the run into the Google Docs shared between all participants. A running episode is defined as a continuous speed faster than a brisk walk, about 4 miles per hour. An example of this will be moving at a speed of 4 miles per hour outside for a mile. Another example of this will be moving at a speed of 2 miles per hour outside for a mile.
Data collection was collected via GPS-enabled cell phones equipped with the fitness application Strava. Distance per running episode was recorded and uploaded to the application following the completion of each instance. The design we used was a multiple baseline across participants for intervention 1 and a changing criterion design for intervention 2.
Baseline phase. Baseline lasted for a total of 2 weeks, and no goals were set during this time. During treatment phase 1, our participants set daily run goals, as well as received feedback once a week. The participants were required to set a goal to run at least 3 times per week. They also were required to set a long-term goal that consisted of the number of miles the participants desired to be running weekly by the conclusion of this study.
For treatment phase 2, it involved intervention 2 where the participants were to set weekly running goals rather than daily running goals. For example, instead of setting a goal to run 1 mile on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they would set a goal to run a certain amount of miles that week. We followed the same format for intervention 1 with the long-term goals and feedback. The only participant that chose to move to intervention 2 after 2 weeks of failed goals in intervention 1 was Melissa. In order to collect IOA data, the group had to display miles ran from the app onto the shared Google Doc. Partners rotated each week to receive feedback. Participants sent a screenshot to their partner, and the partner verified by comparing to the Google Doc.
This is how treatment integrity was shown with a checklist observed. We had group meetings via Google Hangouts and weekly check-ins with the partners assigned. Each participant had to fill out these Google Docs and share it with a partner.
The results we obtained are similar to the original study. It should be noted, however, that several factors were different in our replication compared to the original study. Differences rest in the measurement system used, feedback system, and IOA data collection. All 4 participants increased their running distance with goal setting and performance feedback. Kelly's running distance increased from a baseline mean of 0.25 miles to a mean of 1.3 miles per week in the last 4 weeks of the intervention. Kelly achieved her weekly goals during 4 out of the 6 weeks of the intervention. Andrea's running distance increased from a baseline mean of 0.4 miles to a mean of 2.76 miles per week. Andrea received her weekly goals during 4 out of the 6 weeks. Melissa's running distance increased from a baseline mean of 0.5 miles to a mean of 1.83 miles per week. Brienne increased her running distance from a baseline mean of 0 miles to a mean of 2.8 miles in the last 3 weeks of the intervention. Brienne achieved her weekly goals in 4 of the 6 weeks. The results of this study will be broken down by each participant. In baseline, Kelly's graph showed a decelerating trend as she ran a total of 0.5 miles over the course of these 2 weeks. The intervention portion of the graph depicts an increasing trend in a therapeutic direction, as well as an increase in level compared to the baseline for weeks 3 and 4. Her graph then shows a stable trend from weeks 5 through 8. When given the choice to switch to intervention 2, this participant chose to continue with the parameters of intervention 1. Data indicates that this participant increased their running distance from a baseline mean of 0.25 miles to a treatment mean of 1.3 miles in the last 3 weeks of the intervention. Kelly achieved her weekly goals in 4 of the 6 weeks.
Brienne's graph showed a zero accelerating trend during baseline, as she ran a total of 0 miles over the course of these first 2 weeks. The intervention portion of the graph depicts an increasing trend in a therapeutic direction, as well as an increase in level compared to baseline. She also continued to stay in intervention 1 for the entire duration of the study. Data indicates that this participant increased their running distance from a baseline mean of 0 miles to a mean of 2.8 miles in the last 3 weeks of the intervention.
Melissa started this study by having no prior experience of running for a short or long-term distance. In baseline, she stayed at 0.5 for the first and second week, due to maintaining how far she was able to push herself in the extreme code. In the intervention 1, the first week was 0.5 miles consecutively 4 days in a row, leading up to 2 miles. In week 2, she ran 1 mile and did 0.5 miles on 2 of the days. In week 3, a repetition of what she did in week 2 was done again. Week 4, she ran 0.5 miles 4 days in a row. In week 5, she ran another 1 mile and 0.5 miles on 2 days in a row. However, meeting the needs of running more or equal to 3 days a week was becoming harder to maintain. Therefore, in the 6th week, she moved on to intervention 2 to have a better chance of the long-term weekly goals met. In week 6, Melissa ran longer distances in a short amount of days with the time availability that she had. Melissa was able to consecutively run 1.5 miles in week 5 to meet a goal of 3 miles, but week 6 consisted of running 2 miles in a consecutive 2 days, and the final week resulted in running 2 miles in 1 day with a 1.5 mile on the second. This resulted with her highest run of 3.5 miles and achieving her weekly goals 3 out of the 6 weeks. Melissa reported that as much as the verbal feedback helped with staying on task, setting goals was more rewarding for her.
Andrea started this study by not running at all and with a baseline of 0. The first week of baseline, she stayed at 0, and by the second week, she was able to run 0.4 miles. The third week, she increased her running distance to 1 mile, and the following week, the trend started to increase by running 1.7 and 3.4 miles by the fifth week. Andrea decided to continue with intervention 1 and keep the original goal of running 3 miles a week. During week 6, there was a decrease in miles run, but dropping to 3.2 miles, but she was still able to meet her weekly goal. The last 2 weeks, there was a slight increase to 3.6 and 3.7 miles by the end of the study. Andrea reported that she was highly motivated by seeing the recording app activity log more than the peers' feedback, and that she loved to see the benefits she was achieving by increasing her healthy habits.
Replication limitations. While the original study suffered from lack of maintenance data, we had limitations of our own. One of these involved the COVID-19 pandemic. With schools being closed, Brianna and Andrea had to take on more responsibility managing their children at home, as well as incorporating e-learning. Melissa had to take on more responsibility at her work due to a reduction in staff. As we wanted to stay healthy and safe, every group member's state issued stay-at-home orders until May 1st. Additionally, since running had to be conducted outside to ensure accurate recording via the app, inclement weather and seasonal allergies also served as limitations in our study. Sometimes it was too cold or rainy to go outside for a run. The study helped promote a healthier lifestyle, and we found goal setting to be more effective than the feedback received. We also were highly motivated by seeing our runs on the app because it helped show our progress weekly and ways to increase our runs. This was a great study to learn how to manage weekly and short-term goals with the right approach.